we want sometimes to pass on the current value of an iteration to the next iteration, and that can be done by means of the shift register. So you can, if you see on the screen, the initial value, even for the 0th iteration, you can feed. Just a second, I need to share my screen. Okay, yeah. Okay, so sometimes we also want to, where is it? Okay. Sometimes you also want to send an initial value to the loop, which can be fed from here. And then every iteration, the value of this iteration will be passed on to the next iteration and will be available from the left hand side. So, we saw this shift register. This is useful feature for passing on the value to next iterations in loops, right? So all while loop, for loop, all loops, event loops, all loops support this feature. And quite a few times, like a lot of programs require shift registers. So this is how we can pass on the value from one iteration to the next iteration. The next, basically, we are looking for some techniques which are very specific for graphical programming. So as I said, the shift register is one such technique. Making the array from a constant or different types of data constant is another such technique. And then next one is local variables. Just like in C or Fortran or any other language, we use local variables sometime. So this is a variable which can be global variable, or it can be a variable which is just local to a certain program. Similarly, in LabVIEW also, many a times there are like in a very complex program, there are requirements where you want to have the data accessible at multiple places without connecting wires. For example, if you have two separate parallel loops and you want certain control to be available in both the loops simultaneously, then you can use the local variables. Similarly, there are instances when you want one control to be feeding the data as input to multiple places, and that's where you use local variable. Making local variable is very easy. I'll show you in the program how do you make. For example, mm, okay, so this is one control. I call it A, let us say, and this is feeding some data. I am indicating it by means of an indicator here. Just shows me the value. Oh, wait. Yeah, this one, so that it looks cool. All right. Now in this program, we want for some other loop also, or for some other structure, we want the value of A parallelly available there as well. So simply we can right click on this and create a local variable. So that's local variable. So now this is the A. I can make it control. I can make it, it can take the data as an input or it can take the data as output. So I can take the value to A, which will also be automatically changed here, changing here. And whatever change I make here will also be available at this place, right? I can make it change to read. Okay. So if I create an indicator here, this can be completely different structure in different loop or somewhere, but the data in A will simultaneously be available in this local variable as well. So whatever I feed here will also be appearing to this one because it is taking it from the local variable, right? So this is just like a local variable in C, which is available everywhere in the program. I can simply read the data from there. So for example, if I make it 5, this one will be 5, this will also be 5, despite of the fact that this is not connected directly to A, but this indicator is connected to the local variable of A. So whatever change I make here, that change will also reflect in this place as well. So this is what local variable is all about. These are not this part and this part are not wired together. They are separate parallel things, but the value of A is updated simultaneously in the local variable of A as well. Right. So this is how you use local variable in the program. Okay, building array we have already seen. Like if there's a loop, and at the end of the loop we can make indexing. I mean enable indexing, and enabling indexing will create an array as output of the loop. If you disable the indexing, then it becomes the last value of the loop. Right? So we have already seen this. This is also very specific to the graphical programming. And finally, one important component is creating a sub VI. Now, this is just like creating a subroutine in your C program. So you are making a program. For example, I'm making something like this. Okay, so I'm doing some calculations. Like for example, I can recreate this example itself. Like, and so right, this is like a finding slope, right? Y1, y2 minus y1 upon x2 minus x1 can find a slope. So for example, we can create a program where I have, this is a very basic, I mean, just example of making some sub VI. I call it y1, one, y2. For example, we are finding slope of something, and we are using very basic formula for it. Okay, and this will give me the slope, right? Of course, we can find a slope from tangent and many other approaches as well, but let us do it numerically, for example. Now, this is a program. Suppose this is a program I have made, and this is something which I need to do many a times. Like if I mean I require to find the slope of something from the values given here, y2 y1 x2 x1, and this is kind of a repeated thing which I require again and again. Then all I have to do is the inputs and output aside, select the common part, like which is between input and output, like this, and then edit, create a sub VI. Right. So create a sub VI will replace this part of the program into a VI, or replace this part of program by VI. So when I do create sub VI, sorry, I am select. Yeah, you see. So now this is a program. This is a small program which is a separate VI, right? I can save it simply to some location from on desktop or somewhere. Okay. So now this is a slope finder VI I have prepared. I have prepared. I mean, I have created and saved on the desktop somewhere here, right? Slope finder. So this is a LabVIEW program which is slope finder. And now not only in this program, I can open any of the file or any of the VI, for example, this one, and simply call select a VI, right? Desktop slope finder. Okay, and it is available here, right? It has all those inputs which were there in the original program. So it has y2 y1 x2 x1, and it gives me the numeric output which is slope, right? I mean, in this we did not write it slope here, otherwise this would have also labeled as, this would have been labeled as slope also. So this VI can be used anywhere in any program, simply by select a VI and picking the path, right? And that's it. It has all the inputs and the output which are already there in the original program, and I can connect it to some other, I mean, I can connect it to whatever I want in that program. So this is like a sub VI or a subroutine which can be called in any other program, right? So if you are making some program which is frequently used, then you create a sub VI, I mean make a sub VI of it, and keep calling it at different places whenever you and wherever you want. Right? So this is called creating a sub VI, which is again a very interesting feature for a graphical program. And and I think this, okay, these are all the techniques which we require to make the program. That's it. Now, rest of the things are very common, very simple. Debugging is the most important part of LabVIEW. It is, I mean, I find it much more easier than other text-based languages. I can so yeah, as I said, like the syntax error are almost impossible. In case if you are making syntax error, for example, if I'm making syntax error, suppose I'm trying to connect a wire from here to here, okay, then it will not connect at all because it says that these are two different data types and cannot be connected. I mean, I cannot turn on an LED using numerical data. So LED requires Boolean data to turn on and off. So this will not be allowed. In case if I have a program where I have missed connecting some wires which are essential, right? For example, this wire is not connected. See, these two wires are not connected is fine. I decide not to connect these two wires is perfectly fine. But a loop without the control to stop is something wrong, right? I mean, this is not allowed in program. So this will be indicated by a broken arrow here. It says that there is an error, essential error in the program, and the program cannot be run at all. So, if I click on here, it will tell me what is that essential error. So it says that while loop condition terminal is not wired. So this terminal required to be wired. Otherwise, this program will not be a meaningful program. So if you look at the broken arrow here, it tells me that there is an error. If I click on it, it will tell me what error it is. So basically, all the syntax error can be easily detected by simply, looking at and clicking at this broken arrow. Okay, the conditional terminal is not wired. Close. Okay, if I do show error, it will also take the cursor here, and because if it is a very big program, it is difficult to find out. There are like 10 while loops. It is difficult to find out which while loop does not have a terminal connected. So that takes it to that while loop, and then simply connecting it will make the arrow proper again. Right. So now this can work. This connection is not there, fine. Like it is not essential for program to run, but this one is required. Okay. So debugging is very important part, and it helps us quickly find out the errors in the program. As I said, major tools are this highlighter, then the stepwise execution, this broken arrow, and that's it. Right? These are the tools which are there for debugging. And of course, the logical debugging. I mean, if there is a logical error, then that debugging is very tricky, and you have to stop, like go through the program very slowly and very carefully. Mostly, just like for any other programs, mostly, the one who has made the program, it is very unlikely that the error will be detected by the same person. Generally, it is difficult to detect an error, to find out the error by the same person. If it is logical error, syntax error can be done. Logical error, sometimes, most of the times, someone else can easily find it out. That's true for any programming language, right? Okay, so these are, and then there are probes which can be put on any wire, and it will tell me the current value of that wire. So these are the debugging techniques. And finally, the best way to learn LabVIEW is Control plus H. So when you, okay, in the LabVIEW, open any program, and when you do Control plus H, it shows the help. Now this help is very comprehensive. I mean, it tells everything about the tool which I am pointing at. So if I take it to, let us say, this one, my cursor is on this less than, it tells me everything. Like it is, this is the tool. It has two inputs, X and Y. It has Boolean output, the green dot. It has Boolean output, which is true if X is less than Y, and false if X is not less than Y. So returns true if X is less than Y. Otherwise, this function returns false. You can change the comparison mode of this function. Then you go to detailed help, and it will tell you everything about this function, right? So the help is, I mean, I have learned LabVIEW completely from this help menu, like just by, and also, like, all my students who are working on LabVIEW, they, whenever they're stuck up somewhere, they'll go to the help and find out what this tool is all about, what are the inputs, what are, then it has open examples. So once you click here, it will open some ready-made files, ready-made programs, which are specifically designed to explain the function of this tool. Right. So this is how you can easily learn LabVIEW, all the functions there. So less than was very simple. Suppose this one. right? Waits the specific number of milliseconds and return the value of the millisecond timer. Wiring a value of 0 to the milliseconds to wait input forces the current thread to yield control of the CPU. So these are, even what you should not do with this tool is also explained here. And if you go to detailed help, it will again tell all these things, like what algorithm does it use, how does it wait. You can also go for details of it, like you had, I mean, if you are on a different platform, not on window, if you are on real time, how the time is calculated, on Windows, how the time is calculated. So all the details, the minute details are available in the detailed help. Just basic functionalities can be seen simply on the small window here, context help. How do you activate it? Control H, right? Control H will bring it up, Control H will hide it. So uh, the easiest way to learn LabVIEW is this one, Control H. Then find examples. If you go to examples, there are millions, not millions, but thousands of examples available. You can go to help and find examples somewhere. Yeah, find examples, or you can simply right click and find examples as well, or you can go from the main panel. But anyways, you'll go from here, find examples. All the examples of all the tools are available. Like if you want to, for example, moon landing, I found it from example only. Right, there are various games, much more game. I mean, a lot of other games are also there. Tetris is there, somebody has made Tetris. You know what Tetris is, right? Yeah, there are lots of games made by some people. Moon landing is one, Tetris is another one, but name is different, so I'll have to find out. Then suppose you want to learn about accelerometer, like how do you use accelerometer with LabVIEW? Simply click on this. There are quite a few programs. Yeah, there are something which requires drivers. So for example, acoustics. So all the acoustics related analysis is done here. Impact testing, peak search. Um, See, everything, I mean, if you are looking for some gearbox related problem, or if you are looking for some Gaussian function, like suppose you have some data and you want to do the Gaussian analysis, like peak analysis, you are expecting Gaussian functions, you want to fit it using Gaussian, you can do that. Right? So some three of Gaussian offset, Gauss mode sign generation, noise statistics, pulse trend demo. So fit Gaussian surface with offset. So all these things are available. There are ready-made examples. Yeah, here we have the acceleration. I think because the games was there, it was not this. So yeah, these are all accelerometer related uh, programs, like waterfall display simulator and all those things. There some examples require add-on toolkit, because as I said, these examples are made by you and me, some people like you and me, and then they uploaded it. But they have had certain test kits available with them, certain add-on kits available with them, which are required to run the example. So in case if you have that same setup, then you can run it, otherwise you cannot. But for basic things, like for example, simple factorial finding or factorization, right? So these examples, I mean, the basic mathematics and basic signal processing examples will be available. It explains everything, like what it is, what it does, what are the equations used, and so on. You can also go to the program and understand, learn program slowly, one by one, and so on, right? For example, curve fitting. If you want to do curve fitting, which is very common for scientific calculations, find examples. So there are lots of curve fitting, general LS fitting, linear combinations, and exponential and power fitting. So you have some data and you want to fit it. Right? There are different types of fits available, and to learn this, like how do you fit you to learn this, go to the block diagram and see how the program is made. Slowly you can turn on the light and see how the program is running one by one and learn it, right? So see, this one uses the structures, this one uses the event loop or time loop, this one uses the while loop, all the other parameters are there, and so on. So examples, I mean, there are plenty of examples. There is example available for almost everything, and you can learn curve fitting and all the things you require from the examples. So yeah, this is the best way to learn it, right? Parametric curve fitting and all these things, sine curve fitting, fit Gaussian surface with offset. All right, so let's see what we have, and then practice. As you practice more, you will learn more. But as I said, this is addictive. I mean, once you start doing it, you do not realize how much time has left. And I mean, this used to happen with me. So yeah, these are the three things by which you can learn. And I think now let us see how we have been using LabVIEW for some of the instruments interfacing. So what I'll do is I'll switch to my mobile and we'll try to show you how it works. Right. Uh, Hopefully, I'll not go to this implementation of GA. But before this, I just want you to see one more video, which is like again made by some students using LabVIEW. And as I said, this is more about talking to instruments. So there are some motors which are controlled by this by these kids. So this is a Rubik cube, right? Rubik's cube. Most of you have had your hands on this device sooner or later, sometimes in the life. So how do you do it? You just arrange it so that all sides have same color. I mean, every block on each side is a same color side. So to do this, there are three holders from three sides, and then they are connected to motors. And and then there's a camera. So you see, there's a camera here. Camera sees a one side, and based on that decides which way to rotate. And this is I mean, basically, there's an algorithm that uh, rotates it multiple times to get one color on one side. Entire program is written in LabVIEW. There are only three motors which are controlled. A few motors, rather, not three motors, a few motors, because there are motors to even hold and release. This is what robotics is all about, right? I mean, you take pictures, take images, and take decisions. Now imagine, this is written by some student, and a very simple program, just a couple of, like, just two or three motors, probably servo motors, and an algorithm. That's it. So yeah, there are plenty of them available. Many of them are by LabVIEW. So this is the power of it. Like, you can. The thing is, the programming is very easy. You can easily write a good program. You can talk to the instruments available to you, and even make robots just with this simple software, right? So yeah, this is it. Now let us switch to this. What I'll do is, I think first I will explain the spectroscopy setup, because many of us are in physics, and some of us will certainly do some spectroscopy. It can be high energy physics, it can be one optical spectroscopy, or some other thing, right? Spectroscopy is very common, it's available everywhere. So for optical spectroscopy, the most basic instrumentations is like a monochromator. So there's a light source, there's monochromator, and what monochromator does is it splits the light into multiple wavelengths, and then we can select the wavelength that comes out from the slit. So we can choose the wavelength of the light. That that monochromatic light will then fall on material. It can be some material spectroscopy or whatever it is, that will fall on a material, and the material will respond. It can generate some EMF, it can generate light back, it can get heated. So we measure the response of the material as a function of the input wavelength, right? This is what spectroscopy, I mean, all spectroscopies are simply varying the energy of input beam and looking for the response of the material or whatever it is, right? So this is what spectroscopy is all about. Now, how do we do that? Like, how do we control all the instruments? I'll try to show it to you in my phone. So I'll turn off the camera here and turn on my mobile camera. All right, am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Oh, all right. So this is my setup. Uh, so this blue thing is light source. Now this light source is on currently, and through some optics, through a couple of lenses, the light. This is broadband light, which means like it has all the wavelengths present, starting from around 400 nanometer to all the way up to 2500 nanometer or so, from visible to near infrared. And from there you have, I mean, we have a monochromator. This shows the path of the light. It goes in. There's a mirror here. The mirror focuses it on somewhere here. This place has one grating. So this is called diffraction grating. Yeah, this is called diffraction grating. Diffraction grating diffracts the light and divides it into multiple wavelengths. Now there's another mirror here. This mirror then makes a big line of the light. So now you know the entire vibrio, entire spectrum is available here. The thin slit will select only one wavelength out of that entire vibrio and will pass it on and send it to the material, right? Now this is the setup. We need to synchronize it. So what do? We talk to this monochromator to decide the wavelength. So one thing is we need to talk to the monochromator to decide the wavelength. Yeah. Okay, I can show you the monochromator from inside. Yeah. So this is how it looks like. This is an around 8 lakhs rupees instrument, but if you open it, it's very simple. That's where the light is coming in from. Then there is one mirror. Okay, this is a mirror. Mirror reflects the light to this place. This is also a mirror, concave mirror. That mirror will reflect the light to the diffraction grating. So this is diffraction grating. You can see this, some shining on it, which is actually dividing the light into multiple wavelengths. It has grooves on it, and then there is another mirror. That mirror reflects the light to this place. So now, if you look at the exit slit, you will see a vibrio. Okay, I mean, basically a rainbow. There are multiple colors starting from blue to red. It's not very clearly visible because intensity is less, but if you look carefully, you will see multiple wavelengths starting from blue to red. Right. And then by rotating this grating, we can align which wavelength will coincide with the output slit. So just by rotating, so there's a motor here, a very precise motor. That rotation of motor will change the wavelength of this, and it is calibrated. So based on that, we can select the wavelength which goes to the sample which is placed here, which can be placed here, or it can go to the detector, and this detector is then connected to a lock-in amplifier. So this is lock-in amplifier. Now these are the two instruments. One is monochromator, which has a motor which rotates, and we need to talk to it and tell it which wavelength you want. We want on the sample. And second one is lock-in amplifier, because we want to read the response of detector on this panel, right? So this now see, this is entire black box. We want to keep it closed, and complete setup should be isolated. And then we do the experiment to complete the run. Yeah, yeah. I'll show this motor. If we restart, the motor will rotate and will reinitialize to original position. You see the even the vibrio is also rotating. अच्छा क्या करता? This is for alignment, calibration and alignment. Now what I'll do is, now see, these are the two instruments. One is monochromator and one is this lock-in amplifier. We need to talk to them and we need to synchronize them. So I'll change the wavelength of monochromator, and then I'll read the value on lock-in amplifier. Right. Now, oh, hmm, okay, yeah. So now if I open my program, any program, okay, let's just go to this. So both these devices are connected using an interface called GPIB. GPIB is a popular interface for connecting instrument to the computer, and there are standard sets of command. Like this is a protocol for GPIB, which are universal protocol, which universal commands. Like every instrument which is GPIB enabled will have following will have those commands available. And whenever you buy an instrument, most good instruments, most companies do provide the LabVIEW driver along with the instrument when you buy it. But if they are not available, you can simply read the manual of the instrument. They have, for example, the manual of lock-in amplifier as well as monochromator both provides the list of GPIB commands, and all you have to do is go to this, LabVIEW program. There is something called GPIB write. So if we go to instrument IO, there are instrument drivers. So all the instrument drivers which I have installed, the drivers will be available here. If not, suppose if it is not there, then this Visa and 488. So 488 is for GPIB. So this has all GPIB commands access. So read GPIB command and write GPIB. Suppose I want to write a command to instrument, I will use this one and write a command here, address string. Every GPIB instrument requires an address. So we have an address for this lock-in amplifier as well as an address for the monochromator. Both are connected to parallel wires, but their addresses are different. So based on the address which I give here, it will talk to one of this device. And then, so I need to write address here. And then I need to write the command string here, data, like this. All right. So when I execute this, the address which is mentioned here, the instrument at that address will receive this command, and that command will have certain meaning. These are the information provided in the manual. Any instrument you buy, if it has the facility to get interfaced with computer, these commands will always be available to us. Right. For example, this one, the one that we have here is SR830, commands SR830. SR830 is name of this instrument, local amplifier. Stanford Research 830, model 830. And yeah, it's a very popular instrument. And now, there are some standard ways by which we write the command. For example, so this is the command field. Whatever command I want to write, I will write it here. For example, I'll share this screen, yeah. All right, so I'm sharing my screen as well. Okay. So for example, I want to write a command like there's something called sensitivity. This is sensitivity. Hello. Yeah. Okay. So turn off the mic. Mic. Okay. So now suppose sensitivity. Now GPIB has this standard format that if you are asking question to the instrument, then it will be followed by a question mark. So I'll write SENS question mark. The question mark indicates that I am asking sensitivity. This is a standard command provided to me by the instrument manual. Every instrument that has interfacing feature will have this list of commands available in the manual. So all I have to do is go and read the manual of any instrument I buy, right? So for example, this Loken amplifier has this command list, and SENS stands for sense. I mean, it's the sensitivity. The question mark means I'm asking it. So when I execute this program, this is the LabVIEW program, very similar to what we have made so far. Just there's a there's a command prompt. I mean, command line. I'm adding a question mark to it and looking for it whether there's a question mark or not. Because if there's a question mark, I'm looking for a response. If there is no question mark, then I'm not looking for a response, because I'm commanding, I'm ordering my instrument. So I can, I mean, there are some query, there are something called queries. I may send a query to the instrument which requires a response. I mean, which will be followed by a response from the instrument. Sometimes I may not have a query. I am just telling the instrument to change the value. So in that case, the question mark will not be there. So this program, we have prepared this program, very basic program, a command line. If the command line contains question mark, then this will be running, and the query will be asked, and the response will be read. If the yeah if the question mark is not there, then there won't be any query. It'll just be a command followed by nothing, right? So this is that program. Now let us see if we write, ask the sensitivity. The response is 25. Now there are 26 different values, or 26 different set of values that I can set, right? So currently it is set on 25. Suppose I want to change it to 23. All I have to do is remove the question mark and this make 23. Currently it is 25. I am changing it to 23. Basically I am changing the sensitivity. It will be converted into some milliampere per voltage or something like that. So that's, suppose I want to change it to 23. Now there is no question mark, so I'll not be looking for any response after it. I'll just tell my instrument to go to sensitivity 23. So now look for that camera, that instrument. When I run this program, this sensitivity will change automatically. Changed, right? So you see the value changed, like it went down by 2 steps, right? Now if I ask the query, what is the current sensitivity, it will tell me 23, right? So basically I'm talking to my Loken amplifier. Suppose there's some query called IDN star question mark, if I'm not wrong. I don't remember the command, but I think it is IDN or star IDN question mark. I think star IDN question mark. That is an identity of the instrument. So when I ask the identity of an instrument, the instrument will introduce itself to me, that I am so and so, this model number and this company and everything. If my query is correct, I should get an answer here. Otherwise, it will hang. Let me try. Yep, true. So star IDN question mark is a identity query. I'm asking the instrument, which instrument are you by? And it says, okay, I am Stanford Research System SR830, serial number 44671, version 1.07. So this is the identity of the instrument, right? So I can simply look at the manual and find out everything, every command. And now I just need to write a program. For example, this is the program for measurement, reflectivity measurement. We have prepared it, and so basically I tell the sensitivity, dynamic reserve, reference phase kya lena hai, and whether AC/DC coupling, what, and then these are the wavelength that I want to scan. What is the time constant? These are all the parameters of Loken amplifier, and some of the parameters are for monochromator. They are synchronized, and when I run the program, it starts from whatever wavelength I have given, like 400 uh, nanometer. It starts at 400 nanometer, keeps increasing by 10 nanometer at every step, and reads the Loken amplifier's value every time it stops at given wavelength, right? Now so that this was about the this Loken amplifier. I'll now show you the monochromator, how it rotates when I give a command from here, right? uh, Again, same thing, like I can go to here, or maybe here. There are two gratings actually. There are two gratings in the monochromator. I can also change the grating. So here it is. Yeah, Akshay, can you show the grating? It will rotate when I change it. Hmm. Open the monochromator. ऊपर. Okay, so currently grating number 1 is there. If I make it grating 2, then light ચાલુ છે? પેલી બંધ છે ઉપરની. ચાલશે? Okay. So I'm just changing, I'm trying to change the grating. Grating will rotate completely 180 degree. Let us see. You see the grating must have rotated completely by 180 degree. There are two gratings, one on this facet, the other one on the other facet, and they have different specifications. So when I want to scan the wavelength in visible range, I generally choose grating 1. When I want to go to the far infrared, I would go to grating 2, because grating 2 have some wider grooves, so it is good for the higher wavelengths. For smaller wavelengths, I have to go to the lower, I mean smaller grooves, and that is for grating 1. That is in grating 1. Right, generally we use grating 1, so I'll switch back to grating 1 again. And you will also be able to see the vibrio, that spectrum. It would widen in grating 2 because of the bigger grooves. Now if I change it to grating 1 again, you see the grating is slowly revolving, and that motor is calibrated to precisely put it so that the wavelength of desired value coincides with the outer slit. Okay, so now we are back to the grating 1, right? And if I, so there is also a question. I mean, if I want to ask what grating it is, tell me the okay, for example, currently the command is this. Okay, okay. For example, currently the command is this, the grating. Okay, this is the command. Yeah, gr80, then that is the command sent to it. If I just replace this gr80 with the question mark, gr80 and question mark, and send it, it will tell me which grating is in place, right? So if in the program I might need to ask which grating is it, and based on that I will take the decision. So that is done here in the program. So first I ask what grating it is. If the grating is not matching with my wavelength range, this tells me, there's a dialog box which tells me that you need to change the grating before you start the program, right? So this is how you can, make an instrument which takes care of possible errors, which can take care of various other things as well. Then you go to a given wavelength. For example, currently the wavelength is, oh, I can ask what wavelength it is. For example, currently I'll just ask, all right, this is fine grating. It will, yeah. Okay, I'll just, okay, so this is destination wavelength. It will go to a certain wavelength which I tell. For example, if I ask it to go to 650 nanometer, which is supposed to be the bright red, then it will go to 650 nanometer wavelength. The grating will rotate and will slowly coincide the vibrio, that rainbow, so that the red color or red light coincides exactly with the outer slit. Suppose I want the green light, then I'll say 530. So 530 is my destination wavelength. It'll slowly move to 530. Now the green color must be matching the outer wavelength. Right. So this is how you change the wavelength. Basically, it's all about talking to instrument. I send a command to my instrument. The command respond. The instrument responds. Either it will give some value, or it will change the position or location or something like this. So LabVIEW basically helps us, talk to the instrument very easily, and I find it I find it much more convenient as compared to many other programming language. Second important part about LabVIEW is its compatibility with lots of instruments, because as I said, Boeing, NASA, LEGO. Even I was looking for some examples. For example, if you're a physicist, you are always fascinated by experiment like LEGO and all. You know that. So I found out this internal. Where is it? Yeah, in, I mean, mm, okay, it closed, I think. Yeah. But anyways, I somehow found out the internal logbook of Lego, and also internal notes of Lego, and it's available on public domain. And they have mentioned like what software do they use to control their vibration tables and control their switches and mirrors. And you see this, okay, this one is it is this this is advanced Lego, and if you search for LabVIEW, you see, um, the motion of the carriages is largely automated under the control of PC running LabVIEW. Then even the switches, the limit switches of the mirror are monitored by LabVIEW and controlled by LabVIEW. A lot of other things, right? Their interference pattern detectors are also interfaced using LabVIEW. So you see a lot of real life applications, real life experiments for physics and engineering are controlled by LabVIEW. This is for LEGO. Even NASA, like this, international space stations have certain life-saving uh, instruments, and those instruments are interfaced using LabVIEW. So LabVIEW is everywhere. Like, if you are in a major real-time scale of operations and experiments, then LabVIEW is there. Um, so this is one thing about instrument and talking to instrument. And finally, on other PC, I'll turn on the camera from other PC or share an instrument from other PC, and I'll show you how we can simply, detect or we can play with the images and detect the colors as well. Okay, so I'll just turn off this screen and share another screen. This is basically demonstration. I'm just trying to show what we do with the LabVIEW, what are the instruments and what are the facilities that or features that we utilize. Right. But basically, the point is we can easily talk to instruments available with us in the lab. I can also share it. Okay, a couple of more things. I can share my screen, an entire program on internet, and can access this screen from anywhere in the world. That is also possible. Yeah. I can also make an EXI like this, build an application. So once I am done and happy with my program, completely ready, I can make an EXE file, then take that EXE file to any computer, install it, and that doesn't require LabVIEW installed. So you might think that, LabVIEW is a very expensive software, and once I make it, I need to use everywhere, and that requires a lot of money and all. That's not the case. It's only for the development. Like once you develop a program and you are ready with it, you can build an application like EXE file, and that exe file can be installed anywhere on any computer, and that only requires a runtime engine which is available freely on National Instrument website. So you just install that runtime engine and then install this exe file. So every that program, for example, this reflectivity measurement program, this program can be converted into an exe file, and that exe file can be installed at any place on any computer. And the moment I open it, it will look like a software with this front panel. And once I connect it to the right ports, this will work on any computer, right? So that computer may not require that computer does not require LabVIEW installed there. It only requires this exe file and the LabVIEW runtime engine, which is freely available. So once you develop a program, once you develop an application, and then deploy it in form of exe file, then you don't require LabVIEW software to run that program, right? So basically, you can make your own software, you can make your own app also. This can also be converted into an app and can be run from mobile, right? But provided that you have the hardware interfacing along with the mobile, or maybe through Wi-Fi or something like that. That requires one extra add-on kit. But yeah, so for example, this is done now. Yeah, these are lots of examples. Okay, I'll go to the other PC and show you how we can do some very simple image processing. Okay, so now you need to switch to Akshay Jariwala's account. I mean, his window. Uh, I'll share it from his PC now. Okay. Yeah, because this is done in his lab view. I mean, his laptop, sorry. Okay. So I'll request Akshay to show us an example. I, I will explain too. Karan. Yeah. So you see, this is a program where this image window, you can see the image window. That image window will have an image, whatever image we select from computer. From that image, we can select some certain area, and then we can do the analysis of the pixels, like how many red pixels are there, how many green pixels are there, and how many blue pixels. Like if we follow the RGB pattern, we may also switch to CMY or other color patterns as well. RGB being the most common one and easy to understand, we switch to RGB. Now, all it will do is we can pick an image from. Yeah. For example, this is traffic signal. Suppose you are making an application where you have a traffic signal, and you want to do the image processing and find out whether the signal was red or not. Suppose आजकल memo आते हैं घर पे, तो at the time when the signal was crossed, the light was red or green or yellow. If you want to find it out, you can have those images, and images will simply do the color processing or pixel processing. We can select any part of this. For example, the red part is selected, and then so it's pure red, so R will be maximum. Go ahead. Yeah, so we got R 254, you can see on screen. R is 254, the maximum will be 255 because it uses 8 bits, 8 bits for color coding. So there are 8 bits for red, 8 bits for green, and 8 bits for blue. But since we have selected the red, perfect red portion of the image, it will exactly show me the red lights, right? Because the other two, green and blue, are almost 0, 0. Yeah. Now suppose we pick some area of this image, again pick it, and blue. Pick the blue part. Yeah. So now you see the blue. I mean, because we selected blue of that, we can segregate the image part into R, G, and B, and find out how much is the R, how much is G, and how much is B in that selected part of the image. Suppose if we select yellow, yellow will have both, I think, green and blue both. Red, green, and some part of blue. Okay. So this is how this is how it tells us what pixels are present, and we can do the analysis. This is a very simple part, but based on this, we have made some very important and very useful applications. For example, if you have ever seen nowadays in the era of Corona, that rapid antigen test is very common. So if you look at the rapid antigen test kit, there are red lines which develop. And if you want to detect whether the red line has been developed or not, you can do it by simply selecting certain area of the image and finding out the red pixels on it, right? So such things can be done by LabVIEW. Akshay has already done some programming like that, and we have been testing some devices. So this is just to give an idea of what are the things we can do on LabVIEW, even at student level. You don't need to be a very hi-fi programmer to do all these things. I mean, when I was student and I used to learn the MATLAB or C, I used to think that if I want to do image processing, that's kind of hell of a program, right? Which is not the case if you are on LabVIEW. You just do the plug and play things, and it will give you the results. So this is it from my side, and that's all about the LabVIEW. I think we are a little early, but it's okay. I think we have some time for question answers if there are any questions. So that's it. I'll stop here and be happy to take questions. Yeah. So questions?
Sir, can I ask one question?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Sir, this is the image processing part. Suppose, let's say we are at some mixed region where the different colors are there. So can it be give me the location of each color? Means like it is giving us the different portion. Let's say combination of the percentage of color which is available at that particular. So can we get exact location of the colors, different colors
Yes.
in a
I
given
mean, so
region of the image?
Yes. Basically, so the moment we select an image, it looks for every pixel, because every pixel has the code of R, G, and B, right? So every pixel generally takes 24 bits, 8 bits for each of the color, if we are following RGB pattern or RGB code. Then for every pixel, the value of R, G, and B can be extracted. For example, that's what Akshay used to do, or Akshay has been doing when he selects some portion of the image. We are selecting that many pixels only, and for every pixel we find out the value of R, and then average it over entire region. So if we don't average, then we can have the even histogram of entire image, like at what pixel, what is the range of red. I can have a two-dimensional graph of R, two-dimensional graph of G, and two-dimensional graph of B for every pixel. So we can easily find out the color for each of the pixel. Each pixel means each point on the image.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Did I answer? I mean, was that a question?
Yeah. Yes. This is the same thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, there's a ready-made tool which tells us exact histogram of the color for all the pixels which are there in the active image. Yeah. Any other question? Anyways, my email ID will be there in the PPT if it is still there. Let me see. And all those who are students here can approach me anytime. Those who are not the students here can also write me an email, and also can visit the lab if you want, and see how we use the LabVIEW to interface our instruments. Right? It's open for all. So where is it? Yeah. Yeah, these are some more cases which we have. I thought we will cover, but this requires a lot of time, so we'll just skip these instruments. Yeah, a lot of image processing is done. Then, yeah, I think my email ID will be there. Yeah. Anyway, this is an old email ID, but my formal email ID is available on website. So the questions can be shoot there. All right then, thank you. Himanshu sir, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So thank you, Vipul sir, for this wonderful session. And definitely the participants, they would be benefited by starting from the scratch, the basics of LabVIEW, and then taken by some real examples like spectroscopy, controlling of monochromator, then controlling of this lock-in amplifier, and then finally a real example of image processing. And they can, just participant, they can encourage themselves, motivate themselves for different types of applications, and definitely at any stage they can discuss with you for any other related query. And they can obviously go for the help section of this lab. So with this, I would like to conclude the second day of this workshop, CTP, Computational Tool for Physics. And I request all the participants to join this workshop tomorrow within time for the next session to be started. Okay, so goodbye for today. We will meet tomorrow again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yep.